All right, 12:01, 12:02, welcome, well, here on Pacific time. Welcome to everyone. Hope you're having a fabulous Friday. My name is Cheryl Lala, and I am the Director of Training and Career Coaching here at EOS, and we are leading a session today on developing an effective resume, a part of the Parity webinar series. So our objectives today are to try to create this resume for you all. We want to understand the value of a resume. Obviously, a resume is something that's still pretty powerful in the business world and something that, employers ask for all the time. Not only employers, sporting companies, everyone will kind of ask for either your athletic resume or your professional resume. And so we want you to have a functional resume that you can give to people without, feeling pressure of having to create one on the spot. So what is the most applicable for an athlete? We want you to highlight your athletic accomplishments. Sometimes athletes are hesitant to, put down that they're a professional athlete and that they, have had all of these accolades. We actually encourage you to put those things down on paper. We want people to see that about you because it does leverage your notoriety. And what are some of the best practices in terms of maximizing the impact of your resume so that people who you want to view your resume are looking at it and going, wow, this is a great resume. So we're going to discuss, at the end, next steps and hopefully get onto that functional template so that we can start creating a little bit of the resume and it doesn't feel so daunting. So we're going to do that together at the end of this. All right, we'll move to the next slide. All right, so like I said, the value of a resume. So it is a pretty powerful tool in the business world. This is, you want to have it be in the inboxes of certain professionals and executives, and you want to stand out in terms of how you are looking on your resume. It's just this, black and white piece of paper. So how do we make this thing stand out? We want to leverage your notoriety and your accomplishments and just build yourselves in a business form in terms of your business reputation. And of course, you'll then use this resume at different networking events. You can use it to pass along to people that you meet once you kind of get their business cards and you email them your resume and just see what you're interested in. So you want to have something that is functional for you at this point. Go to the next slide. So we are going to be discussing the three types of resumes that are out there. I'm not sure if anybody has heard the different types of resumes that are out there, but there are some different types, and we're going to discuss what is going to be the most beneficial for you all. The three types of resumes are chronological, functional, and targeted. And so we're recommending that functional be the one that you all use as athletes. It's just a recommendation. It's not something that you have to definitely do, but if you feel like you fit a little bit better in chronological or targeted, you have a job that you're specifically applying for, or maybe then you want to use a targeted template, right? For now, we have focused on functional, and so the template that we did send out focuses on skills, applicable to diverse experiences, and it really does stand out for professional athletes as just a general template that we're sending out. But we are going to talk about all three of these templates so you get an idea of what each one is. Okay, chronological resume. Well, it's chronological. And so it draws attention to your work experience. If you've been, in the same field doing the same thing for several years, this is why people use a chronological resume. If they've, went to college and then they graduated from college and then went into a career field and just have been working for the last 10 years, they would probably use this type of resume. And you can see that we have an example on the slide there. Medical receptionist, medical assistant, and there's some dates and times, and it's a very chronological order. There's no gaps in career history or work experience. And it's pretty familiar. So this is a thing that most likely is circulating out there. So when you're looking at resumes, if you're looking at examples, you're probably looking at things like a chronological resume. And it can be a little bit of fear inducing, like, oh, I may not have that, in terms of a chronological resume, but don't worry because it's not the end all be all. This is not the only one that's out there. It's just an example of one that's widely used. And, if you're working with well-known companies, this is probably the resume that most of those companies are using. So it's just one of the types that you can use. It's, like I said, not the end all be all, but it is in terms of chronological order. And, honestly, you could use this a little bit in terms of just, sorry, Minji. You could use this chronological resume if you were just highlighting athletic experience, because I do recommend for folks to have an athletic resume and then maybe a business resume, and merge the two together into a professional resume that encompasses all. So if you're just looking for an athletic resume that maybe you're going to go out there and leverage to different sports sponsorship companies or as a brand ambassador, you could actually use this chronological resume just to highlight your athletic achievements over the span of the last 10 years. So you could use it in that facet as well. So sorry, we'll go to the next one now, which is going to be the functional resume. So the functional resume is what we're going to be working with at the end of this webinar here, and it highlights your abilities. If you notice on the screenshot that we have taken of an example of the functional resume, this one doesn't have dates on it. So it just has, your areas of expertise, kind of what you were doing, your title and your position, and a few bullet points underneath that. So it's not necessary for it to be, chronological. There are some gaps there possibly in terms of dates and times. And it does work really well when you're trying to highlight and summarize your work history, and it may not so much be chronological. So that's kind of why we've picked the functional resume here as something that we are gonna go ahead and edit. It highlights the transferable skills. It's good for the career transition for all those folks that are in athletics right now and then, are gonna make this switch completely out of the athletics industry. This is a good template to use. And it de-emphasizes the short stints that you may have at a job because, again, it doesn't have dates on there. So, people won't know if you've been somewhere for only a couple of months or something like that. A targeted resume. So this is the third one that we're going to be discussing, and it's just like it sounds as well, right? So let's say you know exactly the occupational role that you want to get into. There's a specific job. Let's say it's in engineering. You want to go out and you want to, be a chemical engineer, and that's what you want to do. That's going to be targeted to highlight the experience that you have maybe in that sector. So this resume, and as you grow later on, you could be using this resume as an iteration of the functional resume when you specifically know what job opening that you're trying to get. If you do know what job opening you're trying to get, then this is the resume to use. It just highlights the skills of that industry and of that job that's needed. And you would pretty much take a lot of the vocabulary that's in the job posting that you're trying to apply for and kind of take it over into this resume and highlight the areas in which you, correspond to those things that the company is specifically looking for that function and role. So before I get into this slide here, is there any questions on the three types of resumes, the chronological, targeted, or functional? Okay, good. Glad it makes sense. So what is the goal of your resume, right? So as an athlete, what you're trying to do is to tell them that you have these transferable skills that you have been doing the last, however many years you've been in your sport. So your job is to show them all of these 5 things that you already have, how smart you are, your proven successes in terms of wins and overcoming adversity when you've lost, your motivation, your discipline. These are 5 essential traits of an athlete. And, you have all of these things, and it's up to you now to kind of think about each one of these buckets and try to fill them in a quantifiable way in terms of a resume. And that can be hard, but it just definitely takes some brainstorming, right? So your intelligence, maybe you're looking at your educational history, some of the certifications you have, some of the things that you've done in the educational sphere, projects you've worked on, any of those things. Proven successes. So perhaps you were, a union rep or a team captain or something like that. You can also highlight some of your athletic accomplishments here in terms of what are the things that you have, proven yourself to succeed at already. Overcoming adversity. I think as an athlete, there's those really tough times. It ebbs and flows in terms of when things are great and when things are not great. And, beg to argue that right now things are not so great and that we're having to like postpone seasons because of the stuff that's going on in the world. So how do we overcome these adversity points? What are the things that you have done to overcome adversity? Maybe you recovered from an injury, you know, mid-season. What are the things that you've done to kind of overcome adversity, and how can you kind of put that down on paper so that people understand what it is you've went through? Your motivation, this is huge. Being, you know, an athlete, you all are passionate people. You're passionate about your sport. You're passionate about the things you do from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. This is your motivation. This is what you want to put in, all the ways in which you are intrinsically motivated to do your sport and extrinsically motivated to do your sports. So, what is it that you bring to the table in terms of your motivation? Think about those things, brainstorm them out, and write them down concretely so that people get a full picture of who you are. And then, of course, discipline, right? I don't know if anybody more disciplined than professional athletes, honestly. So, the time management, the dedication to detail, the waking up and going hard every single day, all of those things should be written down in terms of your resume. So I think for everyone on this call, you can look at these 5 things and say, you have these things, you've done these things, and how do we put them on paper now?
2 more things that I think we should add on the slide. One, I think the mindset generally is really important. I think in working with athletes, we found that there is some trepidation, some anxiety or lack of confidence that like you don't know kind of how the professional world works, or you've never had a job. And that's totally understandable. I think from where I sit, right, where we are hiring and we're always looking at different candidates. And it rarely matters that you have subject matter expertise, right? So this obviously doesn't apply if you're applying to be a doctor. So I'm going to carve those jobs out of it for now. But if you think about it, right, when I look to hire, I'm much more interested that you are goal oriented and you have experience working towards goals and actually achieving them or not achieving them, and actually being mentally able to work through that. The other big thing that I think is I cannot stress this enough, but you all have the ability to take feedback in a non-personal way, right? I think you're used to having coaches tell you that you suck and you need to fix things, right? And it doesn't have anything to do with who you are as a person. And that, to me, in terms of finding a teammate to work with in a professional setting, is so valuable. And so that is to say, I think we work with a lot of athletes who don't step into these situations with as much confidence as they should. And so I think that mindset, like, you are incredibly attractive to people like me who are hiring. So please keep that in mind. I think that's a really important kind of head distinction as you're going through this process.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Minji. Okay, so now we're going to kind of get into the brainstorm mode of this webinar, which is if you have a piece of paper handy, if you're going to be working off your computer and going ahead and making some adjustments to your resume, start with a list, right? List out all the aspects of your life. Education. So, from high school, awards, accomplishments, college, AP classes, thesis, any of those things, internships maybe that you did in school, any of those things that you can kind of think in your educational bucket that you have accomplished and done, even if it's in process, right? So perhaps you haven't finished school, but it's in process. So you could put that down with an expected date of like, this is the date that I'm expected to receive, the certificate or my degree or whatever it is. So list out everything that's applicable to your education bucket. And then from there, move on to your athletic accomplishments bucket, right? Who are you? Are you a professional athlete? Were you a student athlete? What school did you go to? What are the things that you maybe accomplished in your sport? Write anything and everything that you can down there. Maybe you were, a player of the year, any of the awards that you have, go ahead and write those out in terms of brainstorming this out as well. Did you have any kind of elected posts? Were you a team captain? Did you serve in student body government? Were you, in any kind of groups, extracurricular groups as well that you were maybe leading and helping? Any of those things, volunteer opportunities as well. If you voluntarily went and spoke somewhere, if you volunteered your time somewhere, go ahead and list all of that stuff out in each one of these buckets. honorary awards, sponsorships, right? So if you're doing any kind of paid sponsorships online, on social media, if you're a brand ambassador, go ahead and write those things down and start to think about the ways in which you can quantify your work. And then, of course, international exposure as well. If you have traveled abroad, and had a meeting abroad, or were able to like talk to different delegates abroad, you want to write those things down as well. Anything and everything, just start brainstorming it out for yourself so that we can then start putting it on your resume. Okay, keys to differentiating your resume. So you're the best in the world. You're the best in the world as a professional athlete. You want to speak to that. Do not shy away from your athletic accomplishments. If that's the one thing you get out of this webinar, it's please do not shy away from listing your athletic accomplishments and really naming who you are as a professional athlete and what sport you're in. Name those things, name your highlights, really make it clear for people that this is who you are and this is what you've achieved so far. What are the skills, right? What are the skills that are associated with your achievements? For you to have the accolades and the achievements that you have, there are skills behind that. You just don't wake up one day and then become like this, professional athlete. There are skills that you have developed concretely to be that person. And so you want to highlight those skills as best as possible. If you did join me for my LinkedIn webinar, you know that there's a skills section on LinkedIn, and we ask you to kind of brainstorm that out as well and have people kind of endorse you for those skills. So if you do have a working LinkedIn, go back to that and look at the skills section and see what are the things that people are endorsing you for as well, and what are the things that you've written down for skills. And then, as I've said, highlighting and overcoming adversity. Minji's just talked to it as well. Being able to take criticism, huge, right, in terms of overcoming adversity. And you are able to do that day in and day out with your coaches. So these are the things that you want to be able to highlight that is really going to make your resume stand out and differentiate you from people who just, have traditional work experience. Okay, so as we're starting now to get this on paper, when you're doing the brainstorm, you can kind of use any words that you want. And then as you're actually writing down the resume and going through it, you want to use as many action words as possible to help your reader. Sorry, bikes going by here, pretty loud. So you want to use as many action words as possible. So don't just put down that you were a 4-year scholarship athlete, right? What does that mean? I think that oftentimes people don't understand what it means to be a 4-year scholarship athlete. They don't get it. So you want to put down, in terms of like the after here, 3-year lettered athlete, 4-year scholarship recipient on a team that made it to NCAA regionals or the playoffs, or had a national berth. You want to put those things down. Maybe you were the hardest working player on the team. Maybe you were the most improved player on the team. Maybe you're player of the year. You want to go ahead and name it and make it simple for people to see and read what it is you were able to accomplish in those 4 years as a scholarship athlete. The next example is member of U.S. national team. Well, for us athletes, we get that that's a big deal. For other people, they may not get that that's a big deal. So we want to spell it out to them as much as possible. What does it mean? And what did you have to accomplish to become a member of a U.S. national team? Were you ranked number 2 in the U.S. for nearly 6 years in a row? That's pretty powerful when you think of it that way. Top 3 in the U.S. to qualify for the national team. You want to be able to put it down for folks so they understand exactly what they're getting when they are seeing you as a member of the U.S. national team or, a scholarship athlete. Comparisons. So comparisons are a great way for people to see your excellence. And this is another facet that may or may not be comfortable for you, to kind of compare yourself to other people. But think of it this way. If you're applying for a job, that person who's reading your resume is comparing you to other people, right? So you kind of want to do it for them ahead of time and tell them why you stand out and why you're so excellent. So you want to make the comparison for them. So here's some examples here. Started my college career on the 3rd string. And by my junior season, I was a full-time starter. As a senior, I was all ACC. That demonstrates how much growth happened for this person, right? How much that player developed and how much that player grew from going from 3rd string to a starter to then all ACC. So you're demonstrating here, in what you're saying, you're comparing to other people how much you grew. Only person from my high school to earn a college degree. So High school sports are important. Youth sports are important. There's so many kids that are playing youth sports and high school sports, but you were the only one to earn, a college degree and to get a college scholarship. That's a big deal. So you want to compare yourself and make yourself stand out from the field. You were one, of all these people that were on the team, one of 20, one of 30, one of 40, whatever it was, that was able to take it to the next level. And then the last point here is improved from top 50 in the US to top 5. So again, that's quantifiable. That's, you've jumped up 45 spots here. That's a huge deal, right? And so you want to be able to quantify your accomplishments as much as possible. Okay, other athletic experiences to help you kind of highlight who you are as a person. So if you were a player's rep or a team captain, really shows that you took that leadership step, right? What were you able to accomplish as a team captain or a player's rep? Were there some projects that you worked on? Did your team make it to, the NCAA national championships or to regionals? Did any of that stuff? Did you win your conference championships, right? So as a team captain, think back, or as a player's rep, think back about the projects that you took initiative of. It could have just been like, hey, I led the team in weekly meetings, facilitated group conversations, built cohesion, all this stuff. Think about the things that you actually did do while you were on these teams. If you were asked to represent government entity abroad, show that too. Anything that you were able to do where you're representing the United States or your country, you want to be able to highlight that and show that in your resume. And then if you have any speaking engagements, if you're valedictorian, or if you were asked to speak on behalf of so-and-so, if you're asked to speak because of your athletic achievements, you want to highlight those and demonstrate those and put those down as well, because they really do round out who you are as a person and all the ways you were able to take your sport and kind of bounce them into the business world with all of these transferable skills: leadership, communication, teamwork. All these things are transferable skills that people look for in the business sector. Okay, so these are some best practices, and essentially, these are some things to kind of think about once you've kind of crafted your resume, you've brainstormed it, you've used some action words, you've put it all together, and now you're kind of going back over and just trying to take a look at it and make sure it looks cohesive and neat. You want to save your resume in a PDF format and send that out in PDF. You don't want to send it if you're going, to apply for a job. You don't want to send it in Microsoft Word. You don't want to send it in any kind of editable format, because then they can edit it on their end, right? But you want to keep it neat and clean and make sure all the margins line up and all of that stuff. So the best way to do that is by keeping it in the PDF format. Now, of course, if you're asking someone to edit it, like maybe after this call, you're going to send me your resume, then you want to send it in that Microsoft Word format so that I can help you edit it, right? But other than that, if you're looking for an actual opportunity, then you're sending it out and networking your resume, always save it in a PDF format. And it's pretty simple to save on your computer as a PDF. Just have to play around with it a little bit, but pretty simple to save. The other thing that I mentioned, the formatting, you want to keep the formatting as perfect as possible. So what that means is the margins all around the borders are all the same. It seems nitpicky, but honestly, people look for these things, right? They're always looking at, hey, did this person keep the margins tight? It's something that happens, when you're looking at 100 or so resumes. You want to know that this person paid attention to detail and made sure that their margins were all the same, all the way around, 1 inch all the way around. The font is the same, right? So you're not starting off like your objective and it's an Arial, and then you move through your expertise and it's in some other font, and then it's in, different sized font. You want to keep it pretty tight there as well. So if the body of your resume is in a 12-point font, which is something that I would recommend, a 12-point, 11-point, 12-point font right there, then you want to keep it there. Obviously, when you're talking about headings and your name, that's going to be in a much bigger font size, and that's okay. So if your name's in a bigger font size, that's cool. And then underneath it, it's going to be, like your address perhaps, or your phone number, your contact information. That's going to be a little bit smaller. And then as you work and break up different sections of your resume, those are going to be in bold, and they're going to be a little bit bigger, but essentially your bullet points will all be in the same font and the same size. And the whole thing honestly should be in the same font. It's just the size that will differentiate to break up the resume a little bit. Okay, and hopefully I've made enough sense when it comes to that. When you save your resume, don't just save it and say resume. there's so many people that just will put like, here's my resume, right? And then send it. And then the file just says resume on it and it doesn't say your name on it. So it's like impossible to search for again. You want to make sure when you're sending these things out that you have your name. So for me, I'm saying Cheryl Lala resume, right? I'm putting that on all of my resumes. And when I apply for jobs or I send it out to folks, I'm going to be putting it as Cheryl Lala resume and sending that out to folks. I'm not just going to put resume. Even though it's coming from me, it's coming from my email, I'm not putting just resume. I'm putting my name, first name, last name, resume. And the same thing for cover letter, Cheryl Lala cover letter. Those are the things that are just best practices to do so that people can find your resume readily and easily. When you're talking about the bullet points, you want to keep it simple. So you don't want to go on for 20 bullet points, right, about all the things that you've done. You want to keep it pretty minimal for the most part, right? So 3 to 5 bullet points, a nice concise sentence of what you were able to achieve and what you were able to do, and 3 to 5 bullet points per experience and expertise kind of section. And then you want to minimize your pages, your resume to 2 pages or less. There is some things out there that people kind of talk about. They want to keep it to like 1 page as well. That's really hard to do. But if you can keep it to 2 pages or less, I think that's a good best practice. If you're applying for something that is completely outside of what you've done before, so you've been in athletics, you know, and now, like I said, you wanted to go in chemical engineering and that maybe you were an engineer in college or something like that. You want to highlight that experience, but you don't want to go on for pages and pages about your athletic experience. You just want to kind of put that concisely down so it is in 1 page, right? So you want to make it very relevant to whatever it is that you're trying to network or apply for. So you want to minimize the pages as much as possible. And then add page numbers if you can. It doesn't matter where, just kind of on the bottom somewhere, add some page numbers in there. So 1 of 2, 1 of 1, doesn't matter. And then check spelling. I can't say this enough. Check punctuation, check spelling, check your grammar. Make sure there's nothing misspelled on your resume, because if there is, even if it's like a simple word like page or something like that, it's going to be thrown out, unfortunately, right? So these are things that people are looking for constantly when they're looking at your resume. Again, like I said, they're comparing you to other people. So if the other person's resume looks really nice, is clean, fonts are nice, they've spelled everything correctly, that's going to stand out. And if yours is like great experience, great athletic experience, really demonstrates all this great, wonderful things, but it didn't bother to spell check it, it's not going to be considered. So always spell check, double spell check, read it out loud. That seems to help me a lot, is I just read the resume out loud to myself, make sure it's making sense, make sure I'm punctuating things correctly and spelling things right. So those are just some best practices to use. We'll head over to the next slide here. Great. Okay, so now comes the time to kind of pull up your resume. So I've linked it here, that functional resume template. And what I'd like y'all to do is just kind of, on your own, just pull it up, go through it a little bit, okay? Write down your name. I think what would be a good exercise to do is write your objective. So there's an objective in there as well in terms of like who you are that we've put down. Use, like I said, some action words, some powerful starting words are also really important here too. So I've linked this to the thesaurus. And so don't just say, helped do X, Y, and Z. Kind of put what's another word for helped, right? And if you can't think of something, consult the thesaurus. That powerful starting word is going to help out quite a bit. So I've given a couple of examples here of like the first word in each one of my examples is created or facilitated. So it shows kind of expertise. It shows that you're kind of, expanding here in terms of what you've actually done. Created is a much more powerful word than like helped. Facilitated, much more powerful word than just like, helped, right? So you want to use as many powerful words as you possibly can. If you need some help, there's online resources. This is a thesaurus that I just kind of linked here that you can use as well. And also you want to show the result of each bullet point too. So in my example, as I said, created 1 to 3 social media posts per week, resulting in, what did it result in? Right? Take your best guess at what it resulted in. Resulting in a 10% increased engagement rate per post. That's something simple that you can look in the analytics. If you did join us for our Instagram, I learned that. You can look in your analytics, right, and your insights, and you can see how much people are engaging with your posts. So you can see if there's a 10% increase or not, right? So you want to put the result. You want to put whatever it's resulting in. So what did you do, and what did that result into? You were a team captain, and you ended up making it. Here I said facilitated weekly team meetings. Let's say you're a team captain. Facilitated weekly team meetings, resulting in increased cohesion that produced 2 victories in the 2019 season. Awesome, right? So it resulted in something. While you were there, what happened? What were the results that you saw? Maybe the team qualified for the first time for regionals or nationals. Those are all things that are attributes of you being in the role. So don't think they're not. Don't think they're just like coaching accolades. They're all things that you helped accomplish. So you want to put down, what did that result into? Okay. So are there any questions so far? I know I've talked quite a bit.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm looking at like just through this the downloaded version, and just like in the education part, does it matter like the order of things? Like I know this isn't a chronological like resume, but does it matter if high school comes first or if college? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you want to start with your most present experience first. So if college and then high school in that sense, right? So it's mostly the things that you have done right now, and then from there you want to go back into your past.
Okay, and then how far back do you think like high school is good?
High school's fine. Yeah, it depends on how much you need to fill your resume up. So if you are at like 3 pages or something, you could probably cut out the high school relevance. If you're struggling to make 1 page, then you want to add it in.
Okay, thank you.
I also would imagine high school is more relevant for you all, since it resulted in you probably being a Division 1 or 2 athlete in college. So obviously if you were an All-American or any other kind of rewards or awards that you got in high school, I think that will be relevant. Jade, you're also asking a question about the professional summary, which is a big debate in the resume space. I'm going to take a shot at this. So your sister, who's a recruiter, is absolutely right. And having been in the seat where, for example, right, if we get, we're hiring summer interns at a big bank, right, I would get a resume book of 100 resumes from college students who'd already been screened and made it past the resume screen. So one is people take 15 seconds on average to review. So going back to Cheryl's point about errors, it's a big one. Your sister probably dealt with a lot of chronological resumes, right? And in chronological resumes, I totally agree that the professional summary is not really common because everything is kind of the same and you know what you're dealing with. I think in a functional one, especially because you're a slightly different candidate and much more interesting, in my opinion, I would stick with having a summary.
Thank you.
Awesome. So Minji, if you could just open up that functional resume template for us.
Yes, putting me on the spot.
Sorry about that. Okay, awesome. So this is just something, like I said, that we just sent out, and you can download it. So from the file format right there, you can just download it.
I sent it as an attachment, so people don't have the link. Yes.
Oh, nice. Okay. I thought they had the link. Okay, never mind then. Perfect. So you guys can keep this and start to make some changes on it if you think that the functional resume is going to be the most beneficial for you. If you don't, then you can always email us and we can give you a different format to use, whether it's chronological or targeted, if you know that you fit in those 2 categories better than the functional. But I would go ahead and start to edit this and change it over to you. So you would put your name there. You could put an impactful title. In terms of the summary, if you want to keep it there, absolutely go ahead and keep it there. But you can see that the formatting here is very tight. It's all the same. It's coming from a template. So all the formatting is kind of staying the same. As you kind of move down into the page a little bit, it just kind of continues in terms of like the areas of expertise. So you want to highlight the different areas that you did brainstorm previously, right? So maybe the first one is, being a professional athlete. You want to put that down, put that in there, all the things that you have completed, 3 to 5 bullet points, use some really powerful words and action statements, and then move to area 2. Area 2, maybe some work experience that you have, right? So maybe you were competing and playing and also, doing a little bit of work on the side as a brand ambassador or as a sponsored athlete or anything like that, or working in an office, who knows, right? So go ahead and put that stuff down as well. And then just continue in terms of education. You want to go ahead and put your degree down. If it's still in progress, just put the expected date. If you're working on any kind of certifications, put that down as well. You could also highlight in the education section, if you were a student athlete, the years that you were a student athlete, and if you're part of any school organization, school groups, if you were an elected on student body president, anything of that nature. You can start with college here and then move to high school if that's applicable and you don't have enough space to kind of cover out the whole 2 pages. And then you want to go ahead and list some awards as well. So you have, under your professional athlete expertise section, put down a few bullet points in terms of your awards there athletically. You can continue to expand here in the award section. Perhaps though, you have some academic accolades as well. Perhaps you have some work accolades that you have and you want to put down. This is where you would put all of those things down. Maybe you've done some certifications, some other classes and some other fields. You want to put some awards down there too. So you want to at least try to fill out 1 page. If you can fill out 2 pages, wonderful, right? And then if you're starting to get, you can put everything down that you want, and then you're just going to kind of cut things out, just because you want to have everything in one place, and then you cut things out as necessary. But just put everything down to begin with, and then cut as necessary into like the 2 pages. Okay. I think as you start to work on this, you'll see it does kind of come after a while, and you'll be able to fill out 1 page at least. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask us or email us afterwards as well.
Cheryl, what's your take on including interests?
I think it depends on who you're actually trying to target. If it's just generally speaking, I think, interests are good there. If you're also looking, on a specific sports sponsorship or something of that nature, then I think including interests would go well there as well. If it's, like I said earlier, I keep going back to my chemical engineering example, probably wouldn't, you wouldn't include interest there. So I think it depends a little bit, but for most part, I would include it. As well as some skills. Skills are also important. So make sure, if you're skilled in diversity and inclusion, put that down. If you're skilled in Microsoft Office, put that down. Some skills on your resume, if you need to kind of fill it out a little bit. Maybe you're skilled in some kind of tech, software, Salesforce, CRM, who knows, right? If you have some of that, put that down as a skill. Those are things that people want to look for. Any other questions about the resume?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you repeat, I guess the emphasis we're supposed to put in the education section? So we put our school and our title, and then do we list everything in awards after that, or what else are we including within the school section or the education section?
Yeah, so you want to put your school name and then your degree, so what you majored in, the years that you were there, and then you'd want to put down if you were a student athlete right underneath it. So put just underneath it if you were a student athlete, 4 years, 2 years, whatever it was, just student athlete. If you are a member of any other activities or groups on campus, then you can put that down there as well. But that's it. You would just kind of keep it short and simple there. In terms of awards, so if you were player of the year for the school, for the athletic team, you would put that under the award section. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions when it relates back to the resume and creating it? Okay, so we'll switch back to someone else.
Oh, sorry, I have a question. I guess you kind of already asked this or answered a little bit, but is there a general timeline in which things no longer, let's assume that you can get up to a page or two. Is there a general timeline in which like school stuff or things like should no longer be included?
Yeah, I think so. If it's if you've already into a page or two and you're citing maybe your last 5 years of what you've been doing, then that's great, right? You don't need to continue to move back, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years back. If you if you don't have enough that's encompassing the 1 or 2 pages, then you want to kind of encompass whatever you've been doing for the last 10 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
And it's also context specific, right? And I don't want to break anybody's heads, but once you get into it, right, like you actually have multiple versions of your resume depending on what your goal is. And so I think there are certain instances where I probably would be interested in the clubs that you were in high school, and other kind of more professional, like you are applying for a job, maybe you'd be less interesting. So it is context driven.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, wonderful. Well, let's go back to our slide point here. So just to kind of wrap things up, use the resume type that is most relevant for you. So like I said, it could be chronological. If you're just doing an athletic resume and just touching on what Minji just said, right? So if there are different resume types, honestly, for what you're trying to market yourself for. And so if you're looking for a sports sponsorship and you're specifically trying to market yourself to a big time sporting manufacturer or equipment maker or someone, brand, basically, you could use that chronological resume and just go through your athletic accomplishments that way. And it would be basically an athletic chronological resume. If you are trying to mix kind of the two and highlight some of your professional experience as an athlete, and then also trying to get into, maybe you're starting a business or you're an entrepreneur or you're just trying to get a job out in the market, that's kind of what you would use your functional resume for. And if you have a specific type of job, just again, back to chemical engineering. I don't know why. That's been my theme today. If you're looking for that specific job, then the targeted resume would be the one for you. Use action words, powerful words. Look up a thesaurus. You can kind of, drop usually stuff into the thesaurus, and then they'll give you some powerful action statements out of that. Put as much as you can down in terms of powerful action words and comparisons, just to quantify your achievements. That's what it's all about, is just quantifying your achievements over and over again. And if you need further help, if you want some other, templates, let us know. Email us. My email's there, cheryl@eos.coach. And let us know, if this was helpful for you, if this was beneficial for you. It can take a few iterations before you get comfortable with building your resume.